Welcome back to Director's Choice. As we careen ever closer to the end of 2020, we inevitably find ourselves on the cusp of spooky season. That's right, Halloween, the time for scares, thrills, and chills, is right around the corner. And who has contributed more to this time of year than renowned horror writer Stephen King? A lot of movies have been made over the years adapting his notoriously nerve-wracking novels, and in recent times, we have seen a rebirth of one of his biggest hits, It. It is the story of a shape-shifting cosmic being that reveals itself in the form of a clown named Pennywise, who uses supernatural powers to keep the depressing town of Derry, Maine, scared to go out at night alone. One thing that always bothered us about the It movies is how little the Loser Club actually understood about It's existence. The Loser Club is a band of 7 misfit kids who face insurmountable odds in their fight against It. Despite the warning on the container one of the 7 in the Loser Club, Mike Hanlon, lies about in the film, they still get the containment process wrong. And in case you didn't already know from the title of the video, there will definitely be a sprinkling of light spoilers ahead. During the scene where the Loser Club learns the truth about what happened to their predecessors, who last tried to stop It from terrorizing the area, there is a clear depiction of all the precursors being quickly and totally destroyed. Though the movie ended on a high note, who is to say that these lovable losers actually saved the town? And for that matter, who's to say that It is confined to just this movie? It feeds on fear, and though It tends to have its own agenda, there is no reason why they couldn't cause even more fear and mayhem by manipulating the world It is in. A veritable Lucifer of the Stephen King universe, and It is omnipotent in all of the films. It's a horrifying, shape-shifting, cosmic being that wants nothing more than to take a bite out of its victims and scare everyone in a several-mile radius within an inch of their lives. Though it can be irresponsible and clumsy because of hubris caused by its greed for more nightmare fuel, when it is organized and in its element, calling it terrifying would be a gross understatement. Easily one of the most powerful and efficient life forms in horror history, It is practically the embodiment of schizophrenic paranoia. Now there's a superpower that should be looked into for any supervillain worth their weight in salt. It is an entity that can thrive in every Stephen King story brought to life on the silver screen. And there's no reason to doubt that It is causing the tragedies and disasters that befall the protagonists of every movie you've seen in theaters that owes its existence to Stephen King. The Shining. Let's start with its modus operandi. It's extremely simple. Infest a relatively small, localized area, usually no bigger than a town. Isolate the target, then scare them, sometimes through deception, chasing them away from their friends in a fearsome form. Perhaps possessing a house, then shutting and locking a door. Then it will either try to kill and eat them, or just kill them. With that in mind, let's start at the top of the Stephen King universe with The Shining. Jack Nicholson portrays It's Meal, Jack, who is driven to madness by ghosts, in a haunted motel, in the middle of nowhere. It isn't much of a stretch to say that the ghosts that whisper sweet nothings into Jack's ears to drive him insane are the shape-shifting clown Pennywise. Think of the fear swelling in the building as Jack corners his wife and starts hacking away at her last bastion of protection, the door, which was no match for his axe. Not to mention the horrifying scenes it forced Danny to experience. Best of all, it wins, killing its victim successfully and forcing the rest of his family to abandon him in the snow, becoming a nice frozen treat for it to chew on. Scare, isolate, freeze. It gets a solid kill, and a lot of entertaining scares to drum up that delectable fear it loves to eat between snacks. Christine. Next, let's move on to an example of it being an object. These are some of our favorite film moments. Christine, the bright red Plymouth Fury, is a natural form for it to terrorize and murder as it works its way through another unsuspecting town. What a genius way to keep from being detected, as it sows fear and collects bodies. If it decides to devour them whole inside the cabin of the car, there is almost no way for anyone to ever find out. We even see an example of the mysterious energy known in the Stephen King universe as deadlights at work. The driver is possessed to eliminate all doubt that the car is to blame for the killings in the local area. Sadly, this does not deter the protagonists from crushing Christine into a cube, destroying it. Or did they? Of course not. It is an immortal god, an unstoppable force, and there is more fear to generate. Cujo. Cujo is a slightly more obscure Stephen King movie. This time, it has decided to take on a more aggressive method to satiate its hunger, deciding to possess a dog this time. A large St. Bernard's powerful frame is more than suitable for it to get plenty of big, meaty bites from the victims foolish enough to be caught alone by the supernatural demon dog. Cujo tries to convince viewers that a bat bite makes the dog rabid, but it's unlikely that rabies is to blame for the dog's sudden boost in strength and aggression. After chewing its way through the locals, the dog vessel for its godly wrath is destroyed via a magnum shot, freeing it to go elsewhere in search of more fear and flesh to dine on. Carrie. In the movie Carrie, it decides to infest the town of Chamberlain, Maine, in its timeless quest for sustenance.
Boy, you can't win a game with her on the team. Look at her. Come on. You eat.
It was especially hungry in this film, as it's one of the higher body counts if you go by the 2002 remake's version of events. This is an awesome example of it manipulating an environment to cause as much fear and death as possible. In the movie, we meet with a special girl named Carrie, who thinks she has telekinetic powers. But the reality is that Carrie never had any telekinetic powers. It just made her think she did by killing people around her and wreaking havoc at opportune times to help manipulate Carrie into thinking it was her calling all the shots. It used Carrie as bait to keep people comfortable enough to stay in town and within striking distance, likely inspiring the bullies to focus in on Carrie's trauma from the period incident at the beginning of the film and priming her to give in to temptation, allowing it to turn the destruction up to 11 as Carrie walks through the town, letting it reduce the place to rubble. After leveling the town, it abandons Carrie and moves on to the next area with more people to scare and snack on. What if it had their own loser club? Children of the Corn. We find out the truth in Stephen King's Children of the Corn in what is a beautiful performance in keeping it sustained with murder and fear. It manipulates the impressionable children to believe that everyone over 18 must be destroyed. There is nothing quite as effective as a group of zealots to round up your victims and offer their pain and fear to their otherworldly overlord, simply known as It. As a side note, if you don't think Isaac, the leader of the children, has a Pennywise feel to his look, you might be blind. It loves a specific kind of creepiness in the forms it chooses when being human, and Isaac fits the bill to a T. Sadly, it was resting on the laurels too long, and ended up falling, as it often does, to its inflated ego, which left it open to counterattack when the monster is temporarily defeated. Though, as you can imagine, after taking out an entire town of people, it was probably just bored and wanted to move on to the next populated area. Pet Sematary. It is, without a doubt, messing with the protagonist Louis in the film Pet Sematary. There are just no other ways to explain the events in this movie. It preys on Louis like he's a member of the loser club through the whole film and runs through the whole gambit to thoroughly torment him. When you consider how much effort it puts into manipulating and terrorizing the members of the loser club, you will not be surprised to see how far it goes to bring fear and pain into Louis' life. Taking the time to manipulate everyone it can, from his kids to his wife. Everybody is getting some fear and loathing in Ludlow, Maine. It even takes its trademark bites out of the victims it kills. It's a shame that its techniques lacks this level of nuance when we meet it in the movies dedicated to introducing the form of the chaotic cosmic clown to the masses. Though that's likely because all of these movies are later forms of it that learned from its mistakes against the Loser Club and employed much more effective measures to destroy their chosen victims and feast on the fear and chaos it creates along the way. Also, the sequel is amazing. Check it out. It isn't there though. Stephen King didn't write the sequel, so the curse of it isn't to blame for the movie's events. Some other spooky spirits have taken over for it when it left. So the question is, where did it go? The Mist. Fortunately, we know exactly where it went. Traveling next to the universe of The Mist, it truly outdoes itself in this one. This movie is easily one of the most impressive displays of power and control of a population as it feasts on their fear and bodies through the grotesque, monstrous forms taken to take its share of their flesh and blood. In The Mist, it presents itself in the perfect form to corral all the victims who supply the fear it needs to fuel its onslaught, while also allowing it to pick out those smart enough to try and flee, and snack on them for some extra energy to get the nightmare started. The entire town's slow breakdown to chaos and fear is cataloged through the point of view of the store, and almost as if it had enough fear to feed on to take over everything on screen. We can only imagine the ecstasy it goes through as more and more of its actions succumb to fear and turn to religion to explain the happenings. To be worshipped as a god greatly increased the influence of its powers in this film, not to mention its ego. Watch this movie. Its ending is amazing. We would love to prattle on and on about every Stephen King universe that only exists because it was hungry and happened to be in the area. But I think we've given you enough evidence to show the truth behind the supernatural force. It is more than just a clown with cosmic shape-shifting powers it uses to scare and tear into its victims. It is an extension of Stephen King's influence over the very stories we've been enjoying on the movie screen. Without it, the movie just doesn't have that mystical Stephen King charm that only Stephen King movies can bring to the table. Thank you for taking the time to learn about the spooky world of Stephen King with us today, and more importantly, the truth behind everyone's favorite killer clown. Take a look at this other recent clip by Director's Choice, and make sure to subscribe and ring the bell to be notified with our latest videos.